Vanquish. Man, this game had me hooked straight from the demo. Seriously, once I played the demo, I just had to run out and grab this game, and for what it is, it's pretty solid. It's a third-person shooter developed by Platinum Games, who have, well, really never made anything notably bad, especially if you take into consideration that they were at one point Clover, and they made Okami and God Hand, and really a lot of other awesome things that never really got sequels. But they're true to their pedigree here. The story is Russia decides to hijack a space colony outfitted with some sort of insane microwave emitter death ray thing, and then decides to attack America because, despite what my calendar says, we're apparently still living in the Cold War. You play as DARPA researcher Sam Gidgeon, equipped with the magical power armor of legend. So at the end of the day, Sam I Am must prove that he will in fact not swallow the green eggs and ham of injustice, Russian oppression, and robot supremacy, I guess. But let's just be honest here, the story completely falls by the wayside and is not really all that good. But to be fair, I think they kind of figured that out when they were developing this game and tried to put a focus on gameplay, which is good because the gameplay is actually pretty solid. Essentially, it is your standard third-person shooter with chest-high walls stretching all the way to the horizon that you can staple yourself to. Except, if you're playing this like me, you probably won't ever be using any cover because you're rocking the R suit, meaning you have the ability to use bullet time. And I mean, okay, that's not exactly new. Every third-person shooter this side of Max Payne has been doing that since Max Payne. But what is cool about this suit, other than the ability to trigger bullet time, is, oh yeah, you can also slide around like a crazy man at super high speeds. This can be useful for flanking your opponents, as well as really just avoiding trouble in general. But what's interesting about this suit is, while you have the ability to use bullet time, and the ability to super accelerate yourself, you can't be spamming it too much. It has an overheating system, and by manually triggering bullet time and taking too much time in there, you'll overheat. Or spending too much time hyper-accelerated, you'll overheat. Or even meleeing your opponents, you'll overheat, which means you can only actually fist fight one enemy at a time, and then stand around like a complete jackass for about 30 seconds until your suit cools down. So one of the prominent features about this game is really managing your mobility as well as trying to figure out the most strategically optimal times to allow yourself to cool down. And that's really cool because it means that yes, there is chest-high walls that you can hide behind, but you shouldn't ever need to do that. And that's what makes this third-person shooter pretty prominent, I think. Now, in addition to being able to hyper-accelerate yourself and activate bullet time, there's also a sort of last stand mechanic where bullet time will actually automatically trigger if you take too much damage. Which is kind of a good thing because this game isn't super great at displaying exactly how damaged you are. Yeah, the screen turns a little bit red, but there's no health bar or anything. You sort of have to assume how much health you have. And that's not necessarily the best way to go about doing things. If we're going to continue down this path of complaining about stuff, well, the story likes to butt in a lot, and when it does so, it likes to move you into this slow-moving first-person mode where you just have to sit and get expositioned at, and that's not fun. Likewise, is another thing that's sort of good and sort of bad are the weapon sets. The first half of the weapons are your standard fare. You've got an assault rifle, heavy machine gun, shotgun, sniper rifle, rocket launcher, kind of what you expect from any militaristic game. But then this game likes to remind you that you're in a sort of sci-fi future by giving you disc launching guns and sound guns, homing like mini satellite cannons. It feels like this game is having something of an identity crisis in terms of weapons, because half the weapons are your standard military fare, the other half are your crazy sci-fi awesome things, and at the end of the day, it feels like it's not trying to appeal to anyone. Because the people who like your generic third-person shooters, they're probably not going to be all that wildly wowed about the crazy weapons in this game, despite the fact that there aren't that many. And likewise, if you're the kind of person who wants crazy sci-fi weapons to make this even more interesting, well, you're going to be disappointed. And honestly, saying this game has an identity crisis in general is kind of accurate, given how much they like to shove that kind of nonsensical story in your face every step of the way, instead of just letting you play the game as much as possible. And I know I'm bringing this up a lot, but there's actually another reason, and once again, this might not appeal to you, but if you're the kind of person who doesn't like a short game, you're going to be disappointed with this one because there's only a few hours of actual gameplay here, and they try and pad it out with those slow-moving exposition segments. I mean, yeah, there's kind of a nice little arcadey challenge mode, which is actually really hard at times, but other than that, that's pretty much the only extra gameplay you're getting out of this beyond the first couple hours that this game provides. And that's a damn shame, because there are some really cool set pieces in this game, and it feels like they could have just taken it further and given you more. And ultimately, while this game is disappointing in a lot of ways just from a gameplay perspective, it's still a fun game with what you get. You have the ability to take over turrets like any other game, but you can also take over small mechs that get ridden into combat. Slide around your giant enemies looking for their weaknesses before they can turn around and smash you to death. Outflank your enemies, use your environment to your own advantage. There's lots of really cool things in this game, and not all of them are completely scripted. A lot of them are actually organic, and I think that whole hyperspeed mechanic ends up making this game feel a lot more interesting and cool. So while this game does have its gameplay issues, and a story that likes to butt itself in far more than it absolutely should because it's not good, I gotta say that the gameplay to this game saves it, despite being a little bit short and falling apart in a few places. Seriously, when you are sliding around at high speed shooting all the enemies in the face, it is an absolute blast to play. Now, presentation-wise, Vanquish is kind of hit and miss. Overall, the character designs are okay, the robot designs are okay, but it's just that, they're okay. They do what they need to do, and there are a few really cool designs. I like the R-suit Sam wears. I really like the giant spider robots that turn to like bipedal mechs, and there are a few other really interesting robots you come across. But that said, there aren't as wide a variety as I would have liked. As well, environmentally speaking, this game is actually really bland. A lot of the game is just gray industrialness, and to be fair, you're in a space station and it's a military game. I get that, I do, but add a bit more color. Come on. Or at the very least, make your environmental designs pop a bit more. And the audio portion of this game is kind of lackluster. The music is completely non-memorable in any way, and the voice acting falls flat. And I'm inclined to think it was both the direction and script they were given, rather than their overall talent, because I have seen quite a few of these voice actors in other things, and they have done much better jobs in there. But that said, in this game, the overall audio presentation isn't that great, and overall it creates a sort of middling presentation in general. Now, if you want a copy of Vanquish, it's not the most common game around, and it does feel like it was overlooked by a fair number of people, but that said, you still should be able to find it in bargain bins to this day. And even if you can't, it's not terribly expensive on eBay. A quick look on eBay says you should be able to get a copy for less than $20 pretty handily. And again, if you're not bothered by a short playtime, I'd say this game is worth it. Yeah, it's got its share of issues, but the time you spend flying around at high speed shooting things is a ton of fun. And, well, yes, you could say this is yet another third-person shooter where you staple yourself to a wall only to jump out of cover to shoot your opponent. Sure, you could say that, but another perspective is, it's a game where you slide around on your butt, propelled by rockets, shooting enemies in the face at crazy high speeds. And that game sounds a hell of a lot more fun now, doesn't it?
Someone blow that thing up!
Sam, remember the high explosives equipped in the suit?
Coming right up. Fire in the hole!